Welcome to the BMX Commentator Podcast with your host, BMX World Cup and World Championship commentator, Rich Eames. You'll hear casual yet in-depth stories from BMX athletes and coaches, industry leaders, and all manner of BMX-connected people as we dive deep behind the scenes into what makes BMX racing the best sport on two wheels. Grab a spicy snack and your favorite beverage and get ready to listen in as the gate drops on yet another killer BMX conversation.
All right, welcome back to the BMX Commentator Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Eames, World Cup and World Championship commentator. Delighted to have on the show today 2016 Olympic BMX gold medalist, icon of the sport, now retired, but still having a big influence on what we do. It's Connor Fields. Connor, welcome to the BMX Commentator Podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah, definitely. You're one of my most requested guests, you and Ross Cullen. And we've had Ross Cullen on recently, but certainly you've been requested quite a few times as well. So I'm glad we finally made it happen. So yeah, we'll just dive straight into it, I think, because, you know, we're not long past the Olympics now. It was only a couple of months ago that Paris took place. So really interested to get your take on the Olympic Games and how you saw it. Because I think you're in a very privileged position being a former Olympic gold medalist. So you've probably got a slightly different viewpoint on it than everybody else. How did you see the Paris Olympics?
Yeah, it was, I guess first off, it was a unique experience for me because, Paris was the fifth Olympics for BMX racing. The first one in 2008, when I was 15 years old, that was the last one that I didn't compete at. So this was really the first time in my adult life that I wasn't competing. So it was kind of an odd experience to not be there. And I kind of felt like I was, I should be getting ready. So that was kind of the first thing I had to kind of learn how to do that was new. But I had a blast watching it. The level is so high right now, both in the men's and the women's, and the riding was just incredible. As far as the results go, I really thought that the right people got the results. There was absolutely no denying that the three Frenchies in the men's have been the three most dominant riders over the last couple of years at home. And they handled the moment, they handled the pressure, which is half the battle at the Olympics, and they got it done. Interestingly enough, the NBC researcher who knew nothing about BMX, she was just assigned BMX along with a couple of other sports to research. She actually put in front of us the stats of this would be the first French Olympic sweep in over 100 years before the competition even began, just because when she was looking at the results of past competitions, she noticed that was a likely scenario, which I thought was really interesting from somebody who is completely unassociated and not emotionally connected to the sport to call it. Whereas I'm obviously more emotionally connected and I have people that I was rooting for, or I had behind the scenes knowledge and information of who's pulling and who's not. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I thought in the men's, the right people won and gotten the medals. And then the athletes in the main, Cam Wood and Isaac and Mateo, those were kind of the 4th through 8th fastest guys. The three semis and the way the format is at the Olympics really ensures you get the right 8 people in the final, and it worked. As far as the women, Saya obviously was lights out, unbelievable. And she'd been so close so many times. Obviously, she'd won a bunch of World Cups, but she was struggling at the big one with, the World Championships or the Olympics in Tokyo. And that was kind of the last thing on her list was, one of the big ones, because there is a difference between winning a World Cup and winning an Olympics or World Championships. And so it was only a matter of time that she was going to do it, and she was absolutely lights out. It was impressive to watch her ride. Obviously, Beth, was the other one who I felt, just on paper was one of the top 3 fastest all day long. I was actually surprised that she didn't, I guess you want to stay in lane 6 all day if that's working for you. But Molly was so impressive down the hill the whole weekend. That's one of the, like, her and Delaney are kind of the two people I wouldn't have wanted to be one to the inside of. So, that was a tough spot for Beth to be in. I think if any other athlete was in lane 7, it might have turned out differently because she would have gotten out clean and had a chance to wind it up and go. So I think Beth definitely is one that can look at that race and say, maybe I should have gotten a medal. But that's part of being an elite athlete. You're not satisfied with anything but the goal you're going for. And then obviously Elise rode well too, but her thing was just racing, getting past on the inside in the first turn. That's just part of racing. And somebody else made a great move, Manon, I believe, to her credit.
Yeah. Did you still get those same butterflies watching an Olympic final than you did from being in one?
I did. Yeah, it is different though, because I the butterflies I got both before the event and for the Olympic final was because I wanted to do a good job, and I was the voice of the sport for my country, and I felt pressure to do a good job and to deliver with that, and then I also had vested interest. I'm good friends and have been for a long time with Isaac, and I'm rooting for him and the Americans, and I want them to do well. And so I was nervous for them, but also I have the experience of knowing, exactly what that moment feels like. And so it's like, I guess PTSD is not the right term, but it's a little bit of like, reminder of what that moment feels like.
Yeah. So you can actually, with you doing what you did for NBC, you can actually describe in, fairly massive detail to a viewer what's going through an athlete's head, how you think they might be preparing, what are the kind of negatives they might encounter at the time. So you've got a really unique perspective on that. And I think that's so valuable, especially in an Olympics like that. So what was the reaction from NBC, from the viewers? Did you get any feedback or anything like that? How did that all turn out?
Well, I guess to touch on what you were just saying, and you'll know this as well as anyone, but there's almost no time to say anything. If that was my biggest challenge was I had so much to say, but I didn't have time to say it all. And then, being that it was on national television, they in the pre-meetings, they wanted us to talk and describe it as if we're talking to somebody who's never seen the sport before. So I couldn't get into like real deep detail, right? I had to talk about the real basic stuff, such as, why the inside is important, and why not clearing a jump and coming up short is going to slow you down. Stuff that when you're commentating a World Cup, you can skip over and get straight into some of the more nitty gritty. There's a lot that I wish I could have said. One thing I think is fascinating is, other than 2008, which obviously doesn't count because it was the first one, the winner of every Olympics was in the final the Olympics before, but didn't medal, I guess, except for Maris. But every single time. So, Maris was in the final in 8, he won in 12. I was in the final in 12 and won in 16. Neek was in the final in 16 and won in 21. And then Joris was in the final in 21 and won in 24. And I believe that's because there's just nothing even remotely close to what an Olympic final feels like. And it can be overwhelming your first time. And so, going into it, knowing what to expect makes it a lot easier to handle the pressure. And for Joris in particular, he was actually in lane 1 in Tokyo. This is just speaking for the men's. The women's is not like that, but for the men's, Joris was in 1 in Tokyo. Yeah. So he knew the exact moment, the exact pressure he was going to face in Paris, which I think is a huge benefit. So if that holds true, you're looking at one of those 3 French boys, if they're still going, Isaac, Cam, Matteo, or Simon. Those are the ones to look out for in LA. But as far as the reaction, I think the biggest thing of all was just the moment even as Americans, and we were American broadcast, and we were rooting for Cam Wood and Elise in those finals. The moment that they had of the three French sweeping, the president of France was there. I mean, it was an Olympic moment that across the entire games is, one of the top moments of the entire games, period. So they were so excited, NBC as a production company, because it was such a special moment. And it was, one of those historic, might not happen again for 100 years type of moments.
Yeah, I think the only thing that could have made that better had it been LA 28 and three Americans sweeping the podium. That would have been kind of like just one step up from that. But I'm sure NBC are hoping for that further down the line.
Well,
so
America's got some work to do if we want that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I'm a bit too old, Rich. I'm past. I can't do it anymore.
No, and I was never able to do it. So between us, we're not going to make it happen, are we? So, yeah, just with regards to, I'm going to dip off into a completely different direction now you've mentioned that. What do you think American riders have to do to be as strong as the French?
It's a long answer. So I watched this medal and this sweep began in 2014. It was years in the making. And the French had never won a medal in the men's class until this games. They were held medalists. But I watched the French team from a distance. Obviously, I'm not in there. But I watched from a distance the way that they handled their business, the way that they prepared, the way they trained, the way they were managed, and the way that they were a true team of individuals. And they went with the method of rising tides raises all ships. And they worked together. They pushed each other. They had leadership that did a good job of making sure everybody was respectful. And, nobody's required to be best friends or exchange Christmas cards, but they were required to train together, to travel together, to be a unit. And, I think that like in all sports, it's a monkey see, monkey do type of thing. And I think a lot of the other countries are going to look at the way France has been doing it and try to copy it. But I think that the U.S. historically has been a very everybody just does it by themselves type of thing. We have leadership and we have a team, but there isn't as much cohesion within that team as the French team. As an example, Corbin and I probably trained together less than 10 times our entire career, and we're the same age, and we were two guys who were trying to win, and we could have really benefited from working together, but we never did. Looking at Paris, every single rider had a different coach. Elise works with Sam. Felicia worked with Kurt. Delaney worked with Tyler Brown. Cam Larson worked with Ariel. Cameron Wood worked with German. So that's 5 athletes, 5 different coaches. And, and then, even the alternates, Jeremy Smith, he worked with Domingo Samoglia. Everybody's got a different coach, so not everybody's on the same page to push each other. So to answer your question, what do they need to do? I think the entire U.S. team would need to look in the mirror, realize that we all have to be better. What can we all do to raise the level as a unit? How can we be better together and set egos aside and work together? Now, with that being said, I'm not behind closed doors. I don't know if they're already doing that. I'm not in the tent anymore. They might be doing that. So this is just an outsider's perspective of a suggestion, but that might already be happening.
Yeah. Because my overriding memory, especially when you were talking about the French before, was Glasgow Worlds 2023. In practice, everybody's doing the thing, and I saw multiple occasions where they were doing group efforts down the second and third straights, group race efforts, and I didn't see anybody else do that. And that was the moment that spoke to me and made me go, yeah, the French are a unit. They know what they're doing. And obviously they got the results on that particular day because Romain ended up winning. So yeah, I think they've had that group dynamic going on for a long time, and the Dutch riders had it for a period of time as well. And I think they've still got it to an extent, but I think the French have it nailed, and I think the other countries have a model to follow, but to do it in their own way.
I think there's that, and then on top of it, going all the way back, I think that the French have some of the most technical tracks in the world. So they become the best and most technical bike riders as kids. So then they get older, and you can develop strength and you can develop speed and power in the gym when you're older. When you're 19 years old, you're not all of a sudden going to learn natural bike technique. You either kind of you can get better, right? But like if you're here, your ceiling's only going to be here. You're not going to be able to go from here to here the same way, or the same way that at the gym, if you spend 24 months really buckled down in the gym, you can get a lot stronger. So I think with the French, it began a long time ago. I mean, Joris, Sylvain, and Romain, you would say, are easily three of the most technically sound and skilled riders in the world. Then from there, like if you look at Joris, and go back especially to like 2010, 11, and 12 when he was a young elite, he was a string bean. He was tiny. And they built the power, but he already had the bike skill and the race craft and the race savvy, but they built the skill around him. Same with Sylvain and same with some of those other boys. So I think that, obviously starting with the base of technique helps. But with that being said, if you want to go to the Olympics for Team France, you better be podiuming at the World Championships and winning World Cups. And like, you have to be one of the top 3 guys in the world if you want to go to the Olympics for France. So it's that iron sharpens iron. Because like, look at Arthur Pilard. I mean, he's probably arguably top 6, top 7 guy in the world. He could have gotten a medal in Paris, and he didn't even race because the other 3 boys on that team were so good.
Yeah.
And so if you want to even crack into that national team, not even the Olympic team, the national team, you better be making World Cup finals. So, you look at like I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but like a Leo Gorian.
Garayan, I always pronounce it as. I hope that's correct.
Okay, so let's call him Leo. So you got Leo, you got Eddie, you got guys like that, Tatiana, got the kind of the next group that's trying to crack in. Yeah. Just making some semis isn't going to do it, whereas if you go make a semi at every World Cup, you're on the American national team.
Yeah.
Or you're on most national teams, but not that one.
Yeah.
So it forces you.
I don't think we've got enough fingers on our hands to actually work out how many French guys could literally be on that Olympic squad. It's frightening, the strength and depth that they've got.
With that being said, though, Joris and Sylvain are part of that 91, 92 group that has been so dominant historically. And, I think that them continuing to race has just brought everybody else behind them up because they're kind of like the pace cars. And everybody has just been kind of following. And Romain, for years, has been following Joris around. And now they're equals now. But, 5+ years ago, he would come over to America and stay at Joris's house and train with Joris. And this is before Romain was a race winner or a contender. This is when he was just kind of coming up. And, so Joris and Sylvain, being the old vets, have brought all these young guys up to follow them in their footsteps and continue to elevate the level of the French team as well as everybody else. Yeah,
and the fact that they're doing what they've done at the age of like 30 or over 30 in Joris's case, BMX has always been seen as like a young guy sport. But the fact that they're, doing what they're doing at 30 plus years old must give the younger guys coming through some proper motivation to go, actually, I can do this over a period of years and actually turn it into something decent.
Totally. Well, and I think there's a couple of things that factor in here, and a couple of thoughts that come to my head. I guess first one, I'm 32. So I'm a month older than Sylvain. And Joris is a January birthday and I'm a September birthday. So even though we raced in junior elite, he was almost 2 years older than me. But, I'm kind of in that age range. I feel physically better now than I ever have in my life. I'm stronger in the gym. I wake up, I feel great. Now, I definitely feel a little older. It takes me longer to warm up and, I don't bounce back quite as quick. But I feel amazing. For me, it was more just mentally after my injuries, I didn't want to risk it anymore. But could I have continued? Absolutely. And I feel great. And I think these young guys are going to see that and they're going to think we could continue going longer. If you are able to avoid injury, you can continue going longer. But with that being said, going back to that 91, 92, nobody really pushed 91, 92 out ever. I mean, Neek really has been like the only guy, and I guess Romain now, but they're only like 93. They're only a little bit younger. None of this new generation has come in and pushed people out the way we pushed the generation before us out. Now, I don't know if something was in the water or, what it was that made that group so good. But if you go back to like 2010 and 11, when like Joris and Jelle Van Gorkum and Sam Willoughby and Corbett and Twan and Sylvan and myself and Tori Nyhog, when we were coming up, the generation before us, we just said, see you guys later. We're going to push you out. We're in. And that hasn't yet happened with the Isaac, Mateo, Cam Wood, Cam Larson generation. It's coming. It's only a matter of time. Father Time is undefeated, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think it was interesting. Like I watched a video that 15 put up I think it was a main event from Rock Hill, and every Olympic champion in the sport was in a main together. And that's a very long time period from 08 to 24. And everybody collided at one time. So I think like in 2015, 16, and 17, those 3 years, you had Maris racing, me racing, Neek racing, Joris racing, and Sam Willoughby and Jelle Van Gorkum and, all these other guys too. So for whatever reason, there's like that generation was really, really strong.
Yeah. So it was like a period of time where, the best of the best were all together, and it's very difficult to replicate that, if not almost impossible. So yeah, I can see why people got pushed on. Who have you got your eye on as the next big thing in BMX? Who do you think is that rider who you can see now coming through where you just think they've got what it takes to be a top elite? Have you spotted anybody in that light yet?
I mean, on the women's side, I think that Saya, Beth are going to be kind of the two that are going to be swapping a lot of the wins over the next few years. I mean, they're still pretty young and they're both, unbelievable bike riders. Now, there's a ton of talented women. I'm a huge fan of Zoe. I really like watching her ride. I think that she is very close. I mean, she's not close. She's won, but she's very close to kind of taking that next step to being like a consistent winner. I think she's right there knocking on that door. I think that in the men's side, Isaac and Cam, I think at least on the U.S. side, Isaac and I guess I should say Isaac and the Cams. It's going to be 10 years, and it's fun to watch because those two boys, they're not exchanging Christmas cards, and those boys are going to be battling for the next period of time. But I truly think it's going to help them both because the depth of competition in America is the weakest it's been in a long time. But those two will be so motivated to beat each other, and they will push each other. And I should say those three because you can lump Cam Larson in there. They're going to be so fired up to beat each other that it'll almost make up for the depth, if that makes sense. Yeah, and they'll raise each other's level, so that when they do go internationally and they race a lot of the international guys, they'll be at a higher level. I think Jamie O'Brink definitely is going to be somebody to look out for in the coming years. Obviously the family pedigree with his dad. he was the youngest guy in Paris, and from experience, being a young guy at the Olympics does nothing but fire you up and motivate you, and show you how big of a deal the Olympics is, and it really gets you motivated to go back. And then I was impressed with Mateo from Colombia. I'm going to be 100% honest. I didn't really know anything about him. And then I saw him at the Olympics. I was like, whoa, this guy's legit. I think, those are kind of going to be the guys in the coming years. Obviously, some of the French. The two things that I'm interested to see, just as a fan, is how much longer can Joris hang on? I mean, he's 33 years old, right? But he's not been knocked off yet. He's been very lucky, in his career. He's avoided injury a lot of his career. I mean, he's had some huge hits, like this one this year in Brisbane. I mean, he went down, and you saw it, and you were like, oof, that's rough. But it was just a broken collarbone. And I don't want to say just a broken collarbone, but like on the scale of things, it could have been a lot worse.
Oh, completely.
So for him, like, not getting hurt does two things. First, obviously, you never have to come back physically from an extended break, right? You take 6 months off for a torn ACL and your leg is completely atrophied. That takes a long time to come back from. So you don't have to come back physically, but also mentally, you don't have to come back from being afraid, right? I remember, in 2018, I had my first head injury, and I had a seizure on the track. And it took me a year and a half. I was racing, but I didn't feel good. I was scared. It took me a long time to come back mentally from that. And I think, avoiding a big injury, you don't have fear because you feel invincible. So you still send it into that first turn. You still make that pass. You don't back off. So Joris has had those two kind of benefits in his career. So I'm interested to see how long he can hang on. That's that one.
Sorry, go on, Connor. Carry on.
And then the other one is just gonna be who's gonna pop in there, because there's always somebody that you don't see coming that all of a sudden just makes that leap and gets to the next step. It always happens. Nobody expected Nick Kimmin in 2015. Nobody. I guess if you're a Brit, you did, but like, out of the foreigners, we were like, who's this Kai White kid, right? He came to the Grands a couple times, and, he was nothing. He was a free lane at the Grands. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, he's winning World Cups, So you never know who it's going to be that's going to make that leap to make it in there. And there will be, without a doubt, between now and LA, a couple of men and a couple of women that make that leap. And I think Molly Simpson is another one to keep an eye on. She's been impressing me lately.
Yeah. I mean, I was, especially on the women's side, I was kind of looking back a little bit further at the talent coming through. So you've got your likes of Ava Corley. She's the first one that springs to mind for me. And then also Freya Chalice from Great Britain. She's just about to move into junior women. She's one of our most exciting prospects. And then you move across to the men's side. Riders like, I know Ross Cullen's been an elite for a couple of years now as well, but I'm certainly expecting a boost in Ross's fortunes over the next sort of few years. And then there's French kids like Clément Rocheroux and those kind of people. There's, like I said, there's a lot of exciting talent that could come from any angle, and I'm just super excited to see who might be the next one up.
Totally. In the past, it used to be that the guy would win. I have more knowledgeable because obviously I race on the guys. I don't this quite well, but we're going to win pretty quickly. For my generation, and Bubba Harris, they were all winning. Right? They were long. There's like they super competitive or winners until later in their careers. Sylvain is my age. Sylvain did not make it to London 2012. He did not make it to Rio 2016. Tokyo was his first games. up until 2016, the first 6 years of Sylvan's elite career, he didn't really do anything. So I have so much respect for Sylvan because he kept chugging at it. He kept working at it. And since 2017, which was our 6th year of elite, since 17, he's been one of the most consistently dominating riders over the past 6 years. Or I look at David Graff, who was a free gate for 6-7 years. He was in the back of the pack, but then he became a winner by the end. And he wasn't until he was in his late 20s until he became one of the guys who was contending and winning. So, that gives me a ton of respect for those guys because I don't know if I would have had the patience to do that. But with that being said, like we were just saying, who's it going to be? It might be somebody we're not thinking of who's 23 years old and is just floating around the quarters right now. And for whatever the penny's going to drop, they're going to change trainers and figure something out, or they're just going to get tired of getting quartered and they're going to step up and take that leap. And I think that's one thing that has changed. Not everybody's Nick Kimmin, where you come in and win first year elite. Sometimes it's going to take longer. And again, as a fan, it's fun.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch. Definitely. I can't wait to see who's going to come through next. So yeah, plenty to look at over the coming years. I just want to change gears slightly. Obviously, you've been retired from the sport now for a couple of years. Your career has taken a slightly different path. I was really interested to find out about the TV presenting that you did and the stuff that you did for PBS Nevada Outdoor, I think it was.
Yep.
I'd love to get the background on A, how it all came about, and B, what you've taken from that and your experience of it and what it's given you both personally and professionally.
So I guess to take it back, so PBS, a lot of people listening to this are from the UK. So PBS is Public Broadcasting Service. It is free television for Americans. And every city, not every city, but every big city has their own PBS station. So PBS Vegas, there's PBS Los Angeles, PBS New York, that kind of thing. And they tend to focus on things that are going to be applicable to the people in their area, right? So people in Nevada, my state, get PBS Vegas. People from Florida aren't going to be watching PBS Vegas. They're going to be watching PBS Florida. I had done a lot of stuff with them over the years when I was competing. They would interview me before the Olympics. They would interview me after the Olympics. We did some features on local BMX tracks and shared the information of how to get involved in the sport. So I had a relationship with some people over there already. The show Outdoor Nevada, the host that was hosting before me retired. He was an older gentleman. He retired, and they needed a new host. So they were looking for somebody who is young, from Nevada, likes the outdoors, and is physically able to do some of the outdoor activities that we have here in Nevada, because the older gentleman was limited just based on his age. And so they were at a production meeting, and somebody mentioned me. And they're like, oh, yeah, we remember him. He was great. Let's have him come in for an audition. So I auditioned for it, and I got it. So the show's awesome. We go around the state, which I think my state's probably bigger than the entire UK. I mean, it's a massive state. But there's a big chunk in the middle that we can't go to. That's Area 51. So we have to avoid the middle. But we go around the state, and we highlight a lot of the amazing things that we have in the outdoors, be it history, historical monuments, things like petroglyphs, or it's rivers, lakes, fishing, mountain biking, hiking. This season, I rappelled down a canyon with the firefighters. They showed me how rescues work when people get trapped at the bottom of a canyon. I rappelled down a canyon. I rode horses with cowboys. I learned about some different species of scorpions that have been discovered here. Like it's an outdoor show focused on our state. And it has been a blast to learn about the state, meet people. But I've had so much fun professionally learning and developing something new, which is I'm now on the other side of the camera and not behind it, What I mean is, Rich, and this, you are interviewing me on this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm the subject matter expert. You're asking me the questions. 99% of everything I've ever done was always this dynamic where somebody's asking me because I'm the person being interviewed. When I'm doing that show, it's the other way. I'm interviewing somebody about something that I know nothing about. I'm not an expert on scorpions. I'm not an expert on fish or trees or, history of ghost towns or whatever it is that we're doing that episode. So I've had to really learn how to be good at interviewing. And it's made me appreciate and respect people who are good at interviewing. But I also now notice when I'm on the other side, if somebody's interviewing me, I notice when somebody's not good at it. So it's been fun to develop my skills. And now that when I'm watching the news or I'm watching another TV show that involves an interview, I'm like trying to pick up on, that was a really good way to phrase that. That was really good patience. That was really good building off of that question. That was a great callback. So it's just been a fun thing to do professionally, to learn a new skill. And just having a new challenge and something to kind of sink my teeth into has been really enjoyable. We just did the second season. The second season is going to air next month. And I watched the first season, and all I did is sit there and I wrote down everything that I did wrong. And just like when you're watching your lap on an iPad, I finally got to see my lap, right? Because I didn't get to see it when we were filming, but I got to see it. I wrote down everything I did wrong, and I tried to fix it for the next time. So I was able to take all the athlete experience stuff and apply it to this. Yeah. And so now I've actually seen the first 4 episodes for this season, and they're so much better. My performance is so much better because I was able to, watch my gait start on my iPad and fix it, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's been fun to do that, and who knows where it'll lead. And, I look at somebody like TJ Lavin, who's another local Vegas guy, who's a X Games gold medalist BMXer, and now hosts a show for MTV. So we'll see where it leads and where this goes.
Yeah. With that in mind then, what was the strangest or most exciting thing that you did as part of that show?
Oh, so much comes to mind, but the thing that really always stands out to me, we covered a town called Jarbidge, which is the most remote town in the contiguous, which is the lower 48 United States. It was 2 hours on a dirt road off the highway. There are 16 people that live there, and it is an old mining town that is not yet a ghost town, but it's on its way. So about 50 years ago, the mines dried up, and most people left, but a few people didn't. So, and this is kind of depressing, but as people die, there's less and less and less and less people. And eventually, because everybody's pretty old, it's going to be a ghost town. So we went, we covered it. We learned about the history of it, and it's gorgeous. It's in the mountains. It's absolutely beautiful. But just seeing the way that they live, the lifestyle of a place like that, and how you just feel like you really are truly remote and you're out in the middle of nowhere, no cell service, no roads, dirt roads, there's no stores, no gas. I mean, it was a trip just to see that.
Wow. I wish we could actually kind of get to watch the shows. I don't know if they're available on.
You can.
Are they on YouTube?
So, they're on YouTube. So PBS Vegas, or I think it's Vegas PBS, is the YouTube channel. And they have all the episodes, both with the old hosts and then with my stuff. It's called Outdoor Nevada on Vegas PBS YouTube channel. But yeah, that Jarbidge episode is interesting. But I will preface by saying it's educational. It's free educational television. So it's fun. I do my best to make it, a little more lively and more fun, but we do have to make it educational. So we talk about history, or if we're covering animals, like this year, we covered a newly discovered scorpion species, and we were out hunting scorpions, which was awesome. But I'm interviewing the biologist about scorpions and about the details of scorpions. So depending on what you're interested in, if you like scorpions, it's a super cool episode. If you're not interested in scorpions, it's probably not the most exciting thing you've ever seen. So I will just warn you on that.
Okay, not many scorpions knocking around Manchester, but it's always interesting to learn something new. Kind of piggybacking onto that as well, you've done quite a bit of keynote speaking and corporate stuff and that kind of thing. How's that been for you? What sort of things have you done with that? Because I had a quick look on your Instagram, and you've done stuff with University of Las Vegas, stuff at Nellis Air Force Base. How's that been for you?
Yeah, it's been cool. Going back, I guess, to how I got started in that, the guy who covered the NBC Olympics for Las Vegas, is the local Las Vegas news media in 2016. When I won, I got to know him pretty well. We did a lot of interviews. Obviously I won, so it was a big deal in my town. And then when I got home, he said, let's go to lunch. And we got lunch, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about doing any keynote speaking? I was 23 at the time. And I was like, what's keynote speaking? I had no idea. And he was like, oh, well, if you craft your story into a message with some information and takeaways for the audience, businesses will pay you to come in and present. And I was like, wait, so I don't have to risk my life and go 7 wide down a supercross hill to earn a few bucks? There's another way to do it. And he laughed, and so he kind of helped me get started with that. I've done a number of keynote speeches for a number of different businesses. And, one thing that I think is really interesting is that when you go to a BMX race, not that people don't think the pros are cool or special, but I almost feel like I get more respect outside of the BMX world, which I've always thought was interesting. And you go to these companies and you show them a video of what BMX is, and you mention to them that it's the most dangerous sport in the Olympics, and that I'm the only Olympic athlete in the history of the games who's won the Olympics and almost died at the Olympics. And, they are hanging on every word. They want to hear what we have to say. But I go to a lot of BMX races, and, they're like, oh, but, I mean, I don't want to be mean here, but they're like, kicking us off the track kicking the pros off the track for the next moto really quick. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, let the next race go. Or, pro practice is done. Get off the track. Don't stop on the track. That kind of thing. So it's an interesting note that I've noticed is the respect level outside is higher. But no, it's been going great, honestly. And it's just like anything. It's hard work and it's preparation. I have to memorize a 1-hour speech. I have no notes, just my memorization of an hour-long monologue, basically. And then I have to get up in front of hundreds of people and deliver. And so just like with racing, I get butterflies before, I get nervous. I got to go through my process. I got to visualize, take deep breaths, stay present in the moment. And then, when you do a good job, you get that same satisfaction, that same rush that you get from performing on race day, because it's the same process. It's prepare, work, pressure, execute, excitement. It's kind of the same process.
Yeah. Because I wanted to ask you if you'd actually had any specific training to do that. Did you go? Of course. You go that deep? Yeah. Okay.
I hired a trainer, speaking coach, to both help me craft my message as well as how to deliver it. And I also hired her before I went on my PBS show, because it's 2 very different ways of presenting when you are presenting in front of an audience live with the goal of motivating, and when I'm, doing an opening like, we're here in Winnemucca, Nevada today, and we're going to be riding horses, riding mountain bikes, and doing some hiking. It's very different. So same way, I don't know. When I was racing, I didn't know the details of what to do in the gym exactly. I didn't study that. So I'm hiring somebody to help me train properly. I'm going to do the same thing in speaking or in whatever I'm doing.
Okay.
I do think that's one benefit of being an athlete. I think that's one reason why my children, if I have kids, will without a doubt do a sport. Doesn't matter what sport, they can do whatever they want. but they will do a sport because I think it teaches you a lot. And one of the things it teaches you is how to be coachable and take feedback. And, I don't take it personally when, my speaking coach tells me, hey, that sucked. Fix this, this, and this. It's just no different than when you're racing and your coach says, hey, that start sucked. Fix this, this, and this. You just have to learn how to do it. And I think that's so important to learn as a skill.
Yeah, to develop that thick skin and be able to take the feedback. So it's a skill in itself, and a lot of people struggle to actually develop that kind of thing. Just talking of coaching and things of that nature, you spent some time on the Supercross and Motocross circuit with a certain Christian Craig, helping Christian out. So what was your kind of role with Christian? How did that develop? What did you do to help him out? Were you just there as a friend, or was there a slightly more formal element to it? How did that work?
Yeah, there's a few things. So obviously Christian used to race BMX. So I've known him since we were like 8 years old. He was on Donovan Long's team, Nick Long's dad's team in San Diego growing up. But he asked me at one point, he's like, hey man, I'm really struggling, mentally with dealing with the pressure. And I feel like I've got everything on practice day, but I'm really struggling to get the job done on race day. What do you think? And so it was kind of a combo between the two. It was like formal, but it was more friend to friend. Like I wasn't a psychologist where we would sit down for an hour once a week and I'd take notes. It was just more of let's bounce ideas off each other. He could vent to me. We could just chit chat. I could notice things, catch him, hey, you're going down that negative thought. Stop thinking that, or whatever. Helping him kind of formalize a pre-race routine, some of the skills that I had learned through the resources I had through the Olympics. And just, it was more of a peer-to-peer type thing, a mentorship role, I guess. And then it eventually turned into, he was like, hey man, I got 3 kids and I got a lot going on. I need some help. Can you help me with my deals? So I've actually also, in addition to that, I've done his agent work for the last 4 or 5 years as well. I have a business management degree, and that's always been something that's interested me and come naturally to me. So, and he knew that. So he asked me to help him out there. So, I did his first star deal and then his Husky deal and then his new star deal and his Fox stuff and his, those little bits and pieces. So, learned a lot, and we've had some good times and we've had a lot of bad times too. He's been hurt a lot, but it's just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So with you having that inside track then into what makes it work on deals within Supercross and Motocross and that kind of stuff, because obviously you're talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars. What do you think BMX as a sport could learn from Supercross in order to make itself more valuable?
I think 2 things that come to mind. Number one is I think the riders need to learn, and any rider that asks me, I try to tell them this. Your goal is not to win races. Your goal is to sell the product that is sponsoring you. Now, winning races helps that. Absolutely. And that's important. But your goal is to sell bicycles. Now, I look at Barry as an example. I mean, he races in the veteran pro class, which is not the highest level. It is not really until recently ever been that big of a deal. But because of the marketing and how he goes about his marketing, he's setting the standard for what athletes can do to provide value for sponsors. And, I would argue that Barry probably moves more product and influences more product than potentially any elite, which is, just a testament to the work that he's doing. So I always encourage, these young athletes, you want to win. Yeah, it's important, but you should ask your sponsor, what can I do to help you? And it has to become more of a partnership. And I was lucky. My dad's a businessman. I studied business in school. It's just always kind of been something I've been around. So I always had a great relationship with my sponsors, and that's why I've been able to continue working with them so long. I've been with Chase for 14 years. I've been with Monster for 12. I'm still with both Chase and Monster today, 3 years retired, because I always say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And go above and beyond. I think that's important. Now, with that being said, one thing I think Supercross does really well is they build heroes. They build their riders up to be as big as they possibly can. And whether it's Jet Lawrence or it's Ryan Dungey or it's, Bubba Stewart, Chad Reed, whoever it is, they try to build these superstars. And I think that BMX could benefit from building these superstars and not being afraid to hurt some feelings and ruffle some feathers and really put Joris and Saya and Beth and Kai and these people on a massive pedestal. And the riders that are going to create fans, the riders that have the ability to reach outside of the endemic BMX market and get people to the track and get people exposed to the sport and putting them on a pedestal to just raise the sports level as a whole. And I recognize the risk with that is, if you make all this stuff about Kai, right? A lot of the other riders might say, well, what about me? I beat Kai this weekend. Why aren't you doing this to me? That's the risk with that. But with that being said, Kai has a great ability of getting kids from the UK who have no exposure to BMX exposed to BMX. And that should be capitalized on. Or Saya now in Australia should be the same way. I think that they shouldn't be afraid to really push certain athletes and allow them to just grow, because it's only going to help the sport as a whole.
Yeah. I think an athlete needs to have another angle rather than just being able to win races. They need to bring something else to the table. They need to bring, an element of their personality. They need to bring some colour. They need to bring the X factor, for want of a better phrase, and not just be a one-dimensional BMX racer. Would you agree with that?
100%. I think that, whatever that is, it has to be natural and real to you. It can't be forced because people will see through it. I think that riders, and I'm not really the best one to say this because I was very curated with everything that I did. But I think riders shouldn't be afraid to be themselves and to allow their personality to shine through. And with that, you're going to have some fans and you're going to get some people that don't like you. I've always said that you can't have fans without having haters. That's the other side of the coin. If you don't want any haters, just don't have any fans. And with that being said, though, I think that riders should just be themselves and not be afraid to do that. But I do think that BMX racing as a whole, all the riders kind of like to stay in a box. Everybody stays here. People don't really go out of the box too much. And, I know a lot of the riders and I know their real personalities. I'll use Sylvan as a great example. Like, he just does what he wants. He's just himself on Instagram. And I think that, he does a great job of just not caring what people think. He's just going to do his own thing, be him. And with that has created a lot of fans and people that think he's funny and that like him. So I think that could be something that people could benefit from, is just leaning into who they are.
Yeah, right. Okay. Certainly some tips there for any of our younger listeners. We've done a couple of podcasts on sponsorship and marketing and that kind of thing. So the tips you've just brought to the table, I think, are probably going to be really helpful for people listening. As we kind of head towards wrapping this up, Connor, I have got some quick fire questions for you as well. That's, feel free to go into a bit more detail on these, but they were just the immediate ones that sprang to mind. What's the best part of being retired?
When you're an athlete, and I say this in my speech, you're on the job 24/7, 365. Everything you do counts. That beer, that dessert, that staying up a little bit later to watch Netflix, whatever, it all counts. It's really nice now to not feel guilty about having dessert or to stay up and watch that extra episode. And, I still am pretty healthy, but it's really nice to not have this like constant thought of, I wonder if Joris is having a beer today. I wonder if Sam's having dessert. it's nice to not have that thought anymore.
Yeah, fantastic. I did actually notice as well from your Instagram that you'd actually got back into the gym and started lifting heavy again.
Yeah. So I took about a year off, and this is a year after my rehabilitation because it was a year of rehab after my injury, and I needed a break. But I really like feeling good and strong and fit just because I'm used to it. And I lift 3 or 4 days a week now, but that's it. I don't do any other training. I don't have sprints. I don't have gates. I don't have laps. I don't have watt bike. I don't have to do any of that. So I lift 3 or 4 times a week. And then I do, some other active stuff, whether it's hiking. I'm playing pickleball tonight. I mountain bike, whatever it is. I'm just enjoying using my body and doing the things that I didn't get a chance to do when I was competing. And I don't think I'll lift heavy forever, but I'm really enjoying it. And to be honest, I am 220 pounds right now. I'm 25 pounds heavier than I raced, and I am just jacked compared to how I was when I raced. Like my race gear doesn't even fit me anymore. And it's not fat, it's muscle, but I'm gonna have to be careful because at some point I'm gonna have to buy an all new wardrobe, and I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah, that'll cost you a few bob for sure.
I used to not be able to lift upper body when I raced because I would put muscle on too quick. Like I had the opposite problem that like most kids want. Most kids want to get buff and put weight on. I would put it on too easily. So I had to be very careful to not put weight on. So it was nice now. I just do a few months of bench press and all of a sudden, shirt's barely fitting anymore.
Yeah, that's it. Fantastic. Next question. If you could have a do-over of any race in your career, which one would it be and why?
So whenever I'm asked this, I have to preface this by saying, if I redo this race, it doesn't change anything because I love the way that my career turned out and I wouldn't change a thing. Even the Tokyo thing, I wouldn't change it because it's given me such a different perspective on life and it has completely changed the way I look at things. Nearly losing your life does that. Makes you more thankful, more grateful. With that being said, there's 3 races that immediately come to mind, and I don't know how I would pick. Number 1, I was in lane number 1 in London, 19 years old, Olympic final, and I just cheesed the start. So that would have been pretty cool to win the Olympics in London. I whole shot at the Worlds in 2014, and Sam got me in the second turn, and it would have been nice to win the Worlds that year. And then obviously Tokyo, training for 5 years for a race and then not even getting to finish it kind of stings. Not saying I would have won. There's no knowing, but it would have been nice to at least find out. I think I probably would have got second or third. I don't know if I had anything for Neek that day, but maybe. But I never got to find out, which kind of stings when you work that hard, get that close, and then don't get to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. What could have been, but at least you're still here, which I suppose is the most important thing of all.
100%.
What's the thing about BMX that you don't miss?
The injuries or, being hurt. That's an easy answer. The other thing that I don't miss is just constantly, like throughout the year, feeling physically sore and tired. I mean, I look back at what we did, and now I was extreme compared to a lot of athletes because I raced the full USA BMX series and the full World Cup series every year. I raced a lot. So I would fly 100,000 miles and race 20 weekends a year. And in between that, be training and squatting and sprinting and doing gates. And like my back and my legs were sore always, it feels good to feel good now.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Totally get that one. And then my final question is, it's a story that you've already told me, but it was the story of a late night meeting with British Cycling. Can you tell that story for the listeners?
My dad was born in the UK. My grandmother is British. and my grandfather was stationed over in England. He was in the Air Force, and he was stationed over in England. Met my grandmother, fell in love, had my dad. My dad was born in Middlesex, and so my dad's a British citizen, and then through my dad, I'm a British citizen. My dad got me the passport when I was born. I have to go into ancient history here to give you background for the meeting, because it wasn't like I just had the meeting for no reason. In 2009, I did my first World Cup, Chula. I turned 17 a couple days before. I was a first-year junior. I turned 17 on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and then the race was on Saturday. And I got third, and beat Donnie Robinson, who was the world champion, current bronze medalist from the year before, and Mike Day, and all the top Americans. And then the following year, the first World Cup of the year was in Madrid in 2010, and they didn't pick me for the U.S. team. And I was like, what? Why would you not? I did one World Cup, and I got third as a first-year junior in the elite class, and I'm a second-year junior now, and you're not going to put me on the World Cup team for this Madrid race. And so we went to Madrid, and I got second. And photo finish with Sam, and I got second. And the U.S. has a thing in their contracts, USA Cycling, where if you're not picked for a team and then you podium, they reimburse you for your trip. If you're under 18, they reimburse you and a guardian. And I was 17, so they had to reimburse me and my dad. And, that trip turned into a very expensive trip for USA Cycling, when they could have saved some money by just picking me. So with that being said, that tells you that I didn't have the best relationship with USA Cycling. They picked Corbin. Red Bull picked Corbin. I had a meeting with Red Bull. They're choosing between me and Corbin, and Red Bull picked Corbin too. So like in 2010 and 11, everybody just kept picking Corbin. That Corbin was going to be the guy. And I got tired of it and feeling as if I was kind of like second fiddle, even though like results wise, I wasn't second fiddle. And then my coach at the time was Sean Dwight, who was good friends with Grant White, who's another Aussie coaching British Cycling. This is in 2011 when this meeting happened, and Liam was racing Velodrome at this time. He had transferred over to the Velodrome. Yeah, and so British Cycling had no men. They basically were there for shenanigans, and there was no men. And Sean, like me, was pretty fed up with the way I was being treated at USA Cycling. And he's like, let's talk to him. Let's hear him out. And so there was a late night meeting with Grant White about if it was possible. And he's like, yeah, it would be possible. And then I said, let me think about it. And then I thought about it for a second, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm not British. I think at this time I had never even been to England. I didn't know what the British national anthem sounded like. I'm like, this is Benedict Arnold here. And I don't know if you know who Benedict Arnold is. But he's a famous American trader during the Revolutionary War who gave information to the British. But I was like, I can't do this. I'm American. Like, I'm as American as it gets. Like, I can't trade and go do this. So I said, thanks, Grant, but I can't do this. And then after that, they didn't know about the meeting. Nobody knew about the meeting, but my relationship with USA Cycling got a lot better. It's much better now. Like, I actually sit on their advisory committee, and everything's all peachy now. But a million years ago, it wasn't all peachy, and there was a conversation with British Cycling. But it all worked out great because Liam came back to racing. He won a world championship for British Cycling. I won the Olympics for Team USA. I didn't become a turncoat and a trader, and all is well. And I still have my British passport, so when I fly to the UK, I can go in the returning home line.
Right, fantastic, brilliant stuff. That's an awesome way to end it, Connor. The team member that could have been but never was. But like you said, it all worked out for the best. I think everybody got what they deserved out of it. Certainly, you got a stellar career out of it. So,
well, and also I think too, the constant feeling slighted, whether or not I actually was. In my mind, I built this chip up on my shoulder that they didn't want to pick me, that Red Bull picked Corbin, USA Cycling picked Corbin, everybody wanted him. So it gave me that fuel. And maybe, if I didn't have that fuel, I wouldn't have been able to be as successful as I was. All athletes need something that motivates them. And for me, maybe that was the spark that I needed to get me going. And here we are.
Yeah. Spite can drive you a long way, can't it? It's spite and anger. So yeah, brilliant stuff.
It's not sustainable, but for a short period of time, it can.
Yeah. I just like the fact that I just had this vision in my mind of you sat in a hotel room somewhere in a very cloak and dagger meeting, and it gives me a mental picture, and it just made me chuckle. So
it was funny. Grant and I actually spoke about it. So Grant is helping out Isaac Kennedy, and so we were in Rock Hill. And when Isaac got hurt, me, Grant, and Isaac were at the hospital. And when Isaac was back getting x-rays, Grant and I were chatting about that meeting, 13 years later?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The things that go on that you don't find out about until afterwards. So, yeah, superb. So, yeah, I think I'll wrap it up here, Connor, and leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. But, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the BMX Commentator podcast. Like I say, you were one of my most requested interviews. I'm so glad we've done it. Thank you for being a part of it. And, all the best for the future.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
Lovely. Thanks, mate. Speak soon.
Thanks for listening to the BMX Commentator podcast, the raddest thing to come out of Wigan since Pool's Pies and the A49. Don't forget to hit the follow button wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to share this episode on your social media channels. To get in touch with the show, drop an Instagram DM to @BMX Commentator. Now, get your ass out to the BMX track and get racing. We'll see you for another show very soon.